These next two hands are kind of cool, the way that they work together, and it goes toward a concept that I think a little bit about. I've never really heard anyone talk about it, so I think could be kind of cool to look at these two hands. So in this hand, someone who I perceive to be a fish opens under the gun. I'd never seen him before. He wasn't playing like any absurd stats or anything like that, I don't think. But I definitely thought he was a fish at the time. So I called here. I think it's kind of standard. Nothing really to talk about. On the flop, I check, and my opponent checks back. I think that he can be checking back a lot of hands. This board is coordinated on the middle end and has a flush draw, so I think it's possible that he just checks back over cards in this spot. I think that he usually bets stuff like a heart draw, usually bets stuff like queen jack, he usually bets stuff like a set, so I think that those are probably not the types of hands that he's checking back. But other than that, there's a lot of different hands he could check back. Turn is a pretty good one for me. I decide to bet. Obviously, I have a lot of outs to the nuts. I got the nut flush draw and the nut straight draw. And if I can just fold him off of something like pocket fives right now, that would be fine, given that we're actually losing to that hand and running behind it in equity. And he could be checking back on the flop with a hand like 9x, but betting the turn, he might just outright fold that. He'll probably call 1, but not 2. So I like betting here, and even if I do get raised, I'm probably going to have, depending on his raise size, I'm probably going to have enough equity to even call a raise here. So I go ahead and lead and then get raised, which I think is pretty weird. On this board, I would expect my opponent to bet any hands that are worth raising at this point. I don't think raising with ace-king is very good here, just given that I have all the sets in my range. Maybe not kings. I'm 3-bet kings sometimes, but I would definitely call with it sometimes too. I have 9-10 in my range. I have queen jack suited in my range. Ace king to raise here seems a little too thin to me. Although he might be doing it. As I said, I perceived him to be a weaker player, so I guess it's possible that he's raising with a hand like ace king. But even against that, as you can see here, I only need 27% to make the call. I don't have 27%, but given how nutted my outs actually are, I think on average I can make up for what I lose with this turn call when I get there on the river. The reason that I think this is so weird is because I just don't think on a board with 9-10 and 2 hearts on it, most people would check back any sort of set or a hand like kings or something like that. So I'm kind of confused at this point. But I decided to just call. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of re-raising. We're just too deep. I mean, I don't want to re-raise and get shoved down. That would just be awful. I'd have to fold. So yeah, I just give it the call. The river is nice because I make the nut flush. It pairs the board, and he overbets 240 into 188. This is just super weird, given that it really only makes sense for him to be doing this now with a hand like a boat or quads. And I had at the time a really hard time believing that he would have checked back the flop with any hand that was now a boat or quads. If I was playing this hand against a regular, I would just snap call the river and not really think twice about much else. Only because if a regular were to overbet here, 240 into 188, I think he would basically either be super nutted with a boat or just be totally airing it out and folding to a shove. So I think shoving here against a regular would be terrible. I tanked it down here and did decide to shove. I just sort of took the attitude that, well, I think that this guy is a fish, and who knows, maybe he'll call this off with aces or even ace-king or just something really dumb. But, you know, like, if he could show up with a hand like aces or ace-king, then, or not ace-king, but if he could show up with a hand like aces, that means he can also show up with kings and maybe even other sets. And I think in retrospect it's probably bad to shove. The only reason I shoved was because of who my opponent was. Again, never make this play against a reg. But he actually ended up snap folding. So it tells me that, and I do think I made a mistake on that river. I should just call. But we can see he snap folded, so we can see that he was definitely bluffing there. So that hand only serves sort of to set up this next hand. This next hand, you can't see the timestamp, but this next hand happens 11 minutes later. I open the button really light here. I perceive the player of the big blind to be a weaker player, so I guess it's okay, but it's still pretty marginal. I mean, I have 4-2. I'm probably not winning very much money here in the long run, so just folding here has got to be fine. Big blind calls, and I flop bottom pair. I decide to c-bet it. Yeah, I have showdown value, and I could check back, but there's not a ton of turns where I'm going to feel real happy about calling a bet. Unless I turn a deuce or a 4 or a heart, I'm probably going to end up having to fold on lots of turns. So given that I don't think that my showdown value is actually going to get me to showdown too often, I decided to just bet. It's sort of like a semi-bluff. It's possible that he folds a hand like 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, something like that. And if he has a hand like a 9 or queen, I'm just betting to get the fold when he doesn't have it, and then when he does have it, I have a nice little disguised 5-outer. So I decided, that's the reason I decided to c-bet here. I get check called and get a really nice turn card. He checks me again, and I make sort of a standard bet. He calls me again, and what do you know? I riverboat. He checks to me. Now, if you'll recall, 11 minutes earlier, that ace-queen hand, when the pot was 188 in that case, he bet 240 and then as a bluff into 188. So my thinking in this spot was, the level that this guy's on, I don't think he's like a super deep thinking player, but he is a thinking player. And especially for him to like make a bet size like 240 into 188 shows that he's at least thinking about what's going on. I decided to bet 240 into about 188 again, just because I think that he thinks, well, if I was betting 240 here into 188, I would be bluffing, which he was. And I think that doing what he does, I know that when he bluffs 240 into 188, he's bluffing, and I don't expect him to be like balanced or anything like that, given the player profile that I've been talking about, the type of player that I think he is. I think that he's just going to look at this, alarm bells are going to go off, and he's going to go, hey, I know what's going on here, I'm getting bluffed. And so he gave it a little tank, ended up jamming, so I obviously call. He has ace-9, which is kind of funny, just because it doesn't make any sense. If I'm polarized on that river, there's nothing. If he thinks I'm polarized and he thinks I'm bluffing enough at the time, he should just call with ace-9 because he'll be ahead. It makes no sense to shove. There's nothing that I'd be overbetting for value and then folding to a shove. So his play on the river is pretty bad, but I think it confirms my read that he's sort of a thinking player. Like he's thinking, oh, I think I'm getting bluffed, so I'm going to shove. But he's not thinking enough to realize that that doesn't make any sense. So the concept that I'm trying to illustrate in this spot is against these types of players who you think are thinking and trying to figure out what's going on, but not necessarily great players, or maybe not necessarily even very good players at all. It's good to see something that they do and sort of use that against them. Use that against them with an opposite type of a hand. So another thing, so if you see like a weaker player overbet with the nuts, you can overbet with a bluff against him because he thinks overbets are for the nuts. This guy thinks that this particular opponent in this hand thinks that overbets are for bluff, so I'm overbetting him for value. There's other opponents who might min lead or something, like min donk bet into you with some sort of hand, and then you get a read on what hands they think are appropriate for doing that with, and then you can go ahead and use that against him by maybe doing it to him with a hand of opposite hand strength or something like that.